Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Mormon Newscast. It is July. It is the 13th. It is here in Utah, hotter than Hades. I'm not kidding. It was well over 100. Everybody is dying here. I understand you, RFM, have very moderate temperatures in Seattle where you are. Welcome to the program.
It's very warm here. According to my computer, it's actually 76 degrees out.
Oh, dear. Oh, dear. Yeah. No, is it hot in St. George where you are, Bill?
Well, in Cedar City, where I'm at,
Yeah,
it rained last night. So it's been pretty cool today. But in southern, in Washington, St. George, all that, it was like 110 yesterday or day before when I was there. So hot.
Yeah. No, I want to say unseasonably warm, and it kind of is. It's been a little cooler. This has caught us all off guard. So hopefully everybody has a nice, refreshing beverage for tonight's program. We have a lot of amazing and interesting and disturbing stories as usual. Our thumbnail is LDS Apostle's brother pleads guilty to CSA. People in the comments are saying, Bill, who makes our thumbnails, that they love that picture of D. Todd kind of on Wade's shoulder going, oh my God, because D. Todd, it's about him as much as it is about Wade and the entire story. So let's look at what stories we are covering tonight really quickly before we dive right in. We're going to be talking about LDS Apostle's brother pleads guilty to CSA, Southern Utah LDS teacher charged with exploitation of a minor. And this is Bill's story, and he has sort of a connection to it, a personal connection. Another BYU-I student sentenced for arson. That is my story. I found this from about a month ago, and I'm going to try to make some connections. It's a little disturbing. Mormon apologist Jacob Hansen loses it. This is RFM's story, and I haven't been following this, although I'm not surprised. So
he's starting to act the way Kwaku was acting right before the involuntary commitment.
Oh, dear. Well, we'll find out more about that in a minute for sure. Bill's going to cover why do the gay stay? And this is an article that came out in the Deseret News that I finally had a chance to read this afternoon. Very interesting, an opinion piece. I'm going to talk about BYU football now sponsored by an energy drink. What? This is a very interesting thing we never thought we'd see. Latter-day transparency. Is it a new age of openness? Bill's going to talk about that. I'm going to cover Mitt Romney thinks that 80 is just too gosh darn old to be in charge of anything. I don't even know if he's listening to himself and what he's saying. And finally, we'll talk about, does anybody want a job removing those annotations off membership records? I've got a job posting for you. So let's start right away. I believe it is RFM at the top of the show.
I see that the order of things is going to be a chiasmus, because at the end, we're going to come back to the beginning and talk about removing annotations on people's records, like was done with Wade Christofferson. Did you want to comment on this? This is the weekly Mormon CSA segment. There's actually more than one story.
Yeah, just our first two stories go right into this. The first one, obviously, is a follow-up on stuff we've already covered with some new additional details. But the second one will be a brand new story. And unfortunately, in Mormonism, it happens every week.
What I did was I read through a number of different places where this matter was covered, and there are different facts in different places, and I tried as best I could to collate the facts from the different sources into this story, so you're hearing facts here that you wouldn't hear just by reading one of these. Now, this is the title. This is ABC4.com, where it says, brother of LDS Apostle pleads guilty to sexually abusing and enticing minors in Ohio and Utah. And this is by Jordan Thornblad. This happened last Thursday when this guilty plea was entered. This is how the headline reads, though, at KSL.com. You see, I showed you this first one from ABC4.com to give you an idea of what a headline might look like. Well, at KSL.com, they have a very different headline. Instead, it says, Ohio man who sent coded sexual letters to Utah child pleads guilty. Instead of brother of LDS Apostle pleads guilty. I see. So we're going to keep mention of the relationship of this man to D. Todd Christofferson out of the headline at KSL.com. Now, here's how KSL.com covered the same matter last November when Wade Christofferson was arrested. This is from November 25th of 2025. You see how that looks the same? Ohio, it's exactly the same. Ohio man, arrested in Utah on child sex abuse charges. KSL doing the Lord's work. Now, this was from the Salt Lake Tribune, however, and their headline read, "Brother of a key LDS apostle will go to prison for sending sexually explicit letters to Utah girl." It is a long headline, but it gets everything in there pretty well, I think. The 73-year-old man, that's Wade Christofferson, admitted to sexually abusing two girls in Ohio and Utah, prosecutors said. The brother of an apostle of the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints pleaded guilty in federal court in Ohio on Thursday, admitting that he coerced and enticed a minor. Wade S. Christofferson, 73, admitted to sexually abusing two girls in Ohio and Utah, according to plea agreement documents. And he pleaded guilty to coercing and exploiting the Utah girl through sexually explicit letters and phone calls. You'll remember that's how he got arrested back in November of last year. Federal prosecutors say the charge carries a minimum mandatory penalty of 10 years in prison. If that's true, then he would be 83 minimum when he got out. I've just been doing criminal law too long. Whenever I see something that says minimum mandatory penalty, I always wonder, okay, so what's the catch? You know, under what circumstances can you get out early, or does this really mean what it indicates? So taking it at face value, that's what it means. 10 years could be a life sentence for Wade. But he could be sentenced to spend the rest of his life in a federal lockup. That would be presumably the maximum. A sentencing date has not yet been set. So they're in one of these situations where the minimum it may be longer than the maximum. Christofferson's older brother is D. Todd Christofferson, who is a Latter-day Saint apostle and a member of the faith's governing First Presidency. The Salt Lake City-based church has said that the apostle did not learn about any abuse allegations against his sibling, against his brother Wade, until sometime in 2020 or 2021. Interestingly, this clip went up yesterday, at least I saw it yesterday, on D. Todd Christofferson's YouTube account. It's a snippet of a talk he gave titled "How to Avoid Deception." I think we can all learn something from D. Todd Christofferson on the subject of how to avoid deception, since he's able to avoid it so well, I think. Going on with the story, that matter involved abuse from decades earlier that was denied. In other words, the matter that D. Todd found out about in 2020 or 2021, the church spokesperson, we haven't heard anything from Wade about this. We just hear from the church spokesperson, because this isn't important enough for him to talk to the membership about it and explain what the hell was going on and what he was doing. Sorry. That matter involved abuse from decades earlier that was denied, a church spokesperson said in a statement. Consistent with respect for adult survivor rights and a request for privacy, he did not take independent public action. In other words, he didn't call the cops. If he had called the cops, if he had cared enough about the kids and the future victims that were likely going to happen and indeed did happen, and if he called the cops, this wouldn't have happened. The things that Wade just got sentenced for, he didn't get sentenced for, he pleaded guilty, sentencing is said over, would never have happened if this man right here in the First Presidency had actually practiced what his church preaches and put the safety of the children ahead of anything else. And these are children in his own family, for crying out loud. If he won't even protect the children in his own family, how do you expect him to protect the children of just regular church members? Once again, it says, when the church leader learned, that's D. Todd, when D. Todd Christofferson learned late last year of the recent abuse, the November one, that led to the federal charge, the statement added he reported it to legal authorities within hours. Now, I want to know what that looks like. Did he actually pick up the phone? Is this a situation that had not already been reported to authorities? Was he the one who made the decision? We don't know because he's not talking. Now, these are my thoughts that I put down in a slide when I was reading this part. So apparently, this is something Wade has been doing since at least the 1990s. I'm talking about the CSA. And even got excommunicated for it, and then reinstated, and his asterisk removed from his records. And D. Todd knows nothing about this. In spite of the fact he is a GA, and in spite of the fact Wade and Todd are blood brothers. This is the story we're being asked to believe by the church. But D. Todd does learn about this long after the fact in 2020 or 2021, when the child victims are grown and asking him for privacy. And when D. Todd learns about the November 2025 incident, D. Todd reports it within hours. So all I'm saying is D. Todd learned about the November 2025 incident with Wade a lot faster than he learned about the stuff Wade was doing back in the 1990s. Hey, any comments from you about this? My meanderings, Bill, Rebecca?
I have a comment.
Yeah.
Why do you think that Wade, who lived in Ohio, and of course his alleged victim was in Utah, why did he physically travel to Utah? I mean, I have, in my opinion, theories about that. I picture a war room, honestly, with, perhaps church lawyers and D. Todd and let's turn yourself in here. Your brother's going to call. I mean, I picture a whole team of people navigating this scenario behind the scenes as soon as it becomes apparent. Because what is your opinion? Why did he travel to Utah to turn himself in?
I hate to pull a Spock on you, but I think I need more facts. I need more data.
Yeah.
The first thing I don't even know is when the flight arrangements were made, if it was before the incident, the phone call, or after.
Right. No, it's very confusing. And of course, I'm not a legal authority, but in my opinion, and I'll say that over and over, it's my opinion. I think once this all came to light, I think everybody behind the scenes scrambled. There was a war room. That D. Todd was contacted, that the church would have been involved in somehow trying to navigate this. So, I mean, that's kind of my opinion. And it kind of fits with maybe some of the things that happened, but something that we don't know about happened. That's all I'll say.
Yeah, you know what I'd like to know? I'd also like to know how many hours after D. Todd found out about it did he contact authorities? What authorities did he contact? And what happened during those hours?
Yep.
And how did he find out? I mean, just questions that anybody would want to know, but that they don't want to talk about. They consider the matter closed, obviously, but we're going to continue to discuss it. Bill?
There were things, if I remember right, when the police had executed a search warrant on his electronic devices, that he was doing internet searches on various things. And again, then he goes to Utah, and I can't help but think that he had a little stop at the church office building and had a conversation with his brother and others at the top of the church to see what can be done. Yeah. I think in the moment we're in, I think the church made a wise decision, report it at least somewhat immediately and have his brother be the one who does it. I think that was a great move on their part, because it would look really bad if there was some significant delay and D. Todd had known earlier and that eventually came out that was the case. But at the end of the day, who knows how all of this went down?
Well, I will tell you once again that I think that D. Todd Christofferson should step down. He should recuse himself from the quorum of the 12, from the first presidency, from the apostleship. And if he doesn't, then the membership of the church is just allowing a person who allowed this to happen because he didn't report it to authorities. I don't care who asked him to do what. I keep trying to put myself in his shoes, okay? I keep trying to put myself in D. Todd Christofferson's shoes, and Rebecca and I were talking about this before the show on the phone. And what I keep I think you do a better job of putting yourself in somebody else's shoes than I do, Rebecca. But on the other hand, what I keep coming back to, the wall I keep running into is, he's an apostle. It is his duty. It is his duty to protect the safety of the children in the church and in his own family. That is his number one priority. Everything else pales in comparison to that. And D. Todd Christofferson failed, and people suffered and were victimized because of that failure. That's why I think D. Todd Christofferson needs to resign. All right, there's a few other things here. Child abuse is inexcusable, the statement said. The Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints is committed to preventing, reporting, and addressing abuse. Then I put this comment, except for a certain apostle who wasn't actually committed to reporting abuse. They actually put this in the story. This is what they gave them, even though it was so obvious that this is something that they don't believe, that they don't practice. And the story is about an apostle not practicing it. It's crazy. According to a statement of facts in Thursday's plea agreement, Wade Christofferson was FaceTiming with a Utah girl last November. This is when he got caught, when her father overheard him asking her to see Snow and Friends. Now, by the way, I was looking for, images to decorate the slides. I found this. It's from a book called Snow Friends. It's got a snowman on it and some little furry woodland friends, I guess. I have no idea if this was something that they came up with or whether they derived it from some other source, this idea of Snow and Friends, or whether it might have been this book. Anyway, it becomes decidedly creepy the way Wade was using it. After Christofferson, that's Wade, after Wade Christofferson's request, the girl went into a bathroom closet and closed the door. Her father opened the door a few seconds later, the statement says, and found the girl lifting up her shirt to the camera, the one that Wade is calling on from Ohio. Police started investigating a week later after a man in Ohio who knew about the alleged abuse in Utah reported that Christofferson had also sexually abused his daughter. So there's another father in the family, I imagine. It doesn't have to be. I'm just imagining, and I don't know that for sure. Christofferson, prosecutors said in their news release, admitted to hands-on sexual abuse. This is more than just this thing, long distance. Admitted to hands-on sexual abuse of the child in Utah. And the second victim in Ohio, approximately 20 times. By the way, I'm just going to say that they could have sent him away for what would have definitely been life. And I think that the main attraction of this, if attraction there be, is that he's got a chance, however slim, of seeing daylight again at the end of 10 years. Whereas if they had added just one more charge, not to mention all that they could have, then he wouldn't even have that much of a chance. The Utah girl told her father and later investigators that Christofferson, that's Wade, had taught her code words and that friends meant nipples and Snow referenced her genitals. The father told investigators that Christofferson had been sending his daughter letters over the past 6 months that used these and other sexual code words. Presumably, he did not know that at the time. A criminal complaint said Christofferson, Wade, wrote the Utah victim a letter with top secret messages, including one that read, "Good for one asterisk game with me," 2 exclamation points. The asterisk is in the middle of the sentence. Police believe the asterisk meant naked. So the code would be for "good for one naked game with me." In another letter, he stated his favorite games to play were called bedtime, fashion show, numbers, ballet, and bathroom closet. While conducting the search warrant, police located an area that was accessible through a small, child-sized door with H. Potter written on it. The room was determined to be a modified attic crawl space with a mattress and pillows, childlike writing on the walls, a piece of paper with Spy Club written on it, and a numerical code. Police also found a child-sized Harry Potter costume in Christofferson's bedroom dresser. A few weeks after the FaceTime call occurred, the Dublin Police Department, that's Ohio, received a report regarding the alleged sexual abuse of an Ohio minor by Christofferson that occurred when the victim was approximately 7 and 8 years old. The defendant committed hands-on sexual abuse of the child in Utah and the second victim in Ohio approximately 20 times. In his letters and calls, Christofferson, Wade, taught the 7-year-old Utah victim words like Snow for vagina, friends for nipples, asterisk for naked, a drawn smiley face. This is from another source. You can tell I included it here because it has additional information. A drawn smiley face for rubs and SS for secret spanks. He was overheard on a FaceTime call asking the victim if he could see her Snow and friends. Christofferson wrote the victim top secret handwritten messages and advised they were only for the victim to read. Police in Dublin, Ohio, where Christofferson lives, Wade, searched his home in November, and a review of his phone allegedly revealed, this is what Bill was talking about, a search history for criminal defense attorneys in Ohio and Utah, as well as the phrase, in Ohio, do clergy have to report child abuse confessions? He also admitted that he sent a text indicating that he was sorry and planned to meet with his bishop to start the repentance process. Okay, what I have is 6 questions here. I know there's some questions that have been popping up on the internet. These are a bit different. There's some similarities, but these are some questions that I have, okay? And then I want to get your thoughts. Question number 1, the 1990s excommunication. Wade Christofferson was excommunicated from the church in the mid-1990s following allegations of child sexual abuse. Did D. Todd Christofferson know the specific reasons for this disciplinary action when it originally occurred, given that he was serving as a general authority of the church at the time, and given the fact Wade is Todd's blood brother? Question 2. The allegations that D. Todd says he first heard about in 2020 or 21, the church has acknowledged that D. Todd learned of abuse allegations against his brother sometime between 2020 and 2021. What specific details did he learn during this window? And why did he choose to respect the privacy of the adult survivors rather than report the allegations to law enforcement and protect the children? Would abuse committed by Wade afterward have been prevented had Todd reported in 2020? This is the thing that if I were D. Todd Christofferson, I'd have trouble looking at myself in the mirror in the morning. Question number 3, reinstatement to the church. Wade Christofferson was later rebaptized and allowed to serve in an Ohio congregation. Did D. Todd Christofferson know about his brother's reinstatement or about the reported removal of annotations on Wade's membership record that permitted him access to children? And that combines 2 very important things in one question. Question number 4, the 2025 FaceTime call. On November 5th, 2025, Wade Christofferson was caught coercing a 7-year-old child in Utah via a sexually explicit FaceTime call, leading to his federal arrest. Exactly when did D. Todd Christofferson learn about this recent incident, and how did he facilitate the report to legal authorities within hours of learning about it? Number 5, could you read this one, Rebecca, and I'll let Bill read number 6.
Yeah, number 5, question number 5, information sharing. Given that he and his brother allegedly spoke frequently over the years, did D. Todd Christofferson ever discuss Wade's past ecclesiastical disciplinary actions or alleged behavioral issues with him directly? Good question.
All right. And then should a high-ranking, you have question number 6 here, ecclesiastical versus legal reporting. Should a high-ranking church leader have intervened to ensure Wade Christofferson was reported to legal authorities in 2020 rather than keeping the matter strictly within church leadership? What about the mid-1990s when the issue came to the church's attention and Wade was excommunicated? Why did no one report to police then?
Wade has been brushed under the rug for 30 years, and I'm willing to wager more. Over and over again, his abuse of children has been swept under the rug by church authorities. And then the asterisk that designated him, or the annotation, whatever it looked like, that designated him as a person who really, shouldn't be around kids. I think it really just says you got to call the past bishop or something and get the real scoop on the guy. But yeah, that got removed as well. This is so bad for the church, and I can understand why the church wants this conversation closed and doesn't want anybody to talk about it, because this, I think, is a dynamite situation for the church. Why did no one report to police then or at any time, I'm wondering. And finally, apparently, I could ask, why did they report it now? Well, I think it finally just it became too much for the family to contain. I think that somebody had enough. And I don't think that was D. Todd, frankly. But maybe it was. If it was, great. But I don't think it was. I wish you would tell us. Hey, this is something here that I've got to bring up because this is Rebecca. Rebecca found this or recalled this. She did something about this a year ago on the newscast. I hadn't thought twice about it. But now that this has all happened with Wade, this is from October 2025. Remember, Wade gets arrested a month later in November of 2025. And what Rebecca remembered was that D. Todd Christofferson in his talk talks about somebody that he knew who got excommunicated. He doesn't mention his name. There was some discussion apparently at the time that it might be his brother, Wade Todd. I'm sorry, what's his brother? Tom. Okay.
Tom, yes.
It might be his brother Tom, but then they thought it doesn't match Tom. But now it might match Wade, now that we know about Wade. Let's look at what it says. I think I can read this.
I know.
And you have to start on the right column. If any of you can even read this from out there, it's just the way it's formatted. You got to start in the right and then go left. It's like Hebrew. Like you, this is what President D. Todd Christofferson was saying in October 2025. Like you, I know some who once enjoyed the gift of the Holy Ghost, but who through failure to keep the commandments of God have lost that blessing. One in particular comes to mind, whose membership in the church had been withdrawn due to transgression. Remember, that's the new lingo for excommunicado. He said, this guy he's talking about, is it Wade? He said that his initial reaction was to feel offended. He felt judged by imperfect leaders. He knew his conduct had been wrong, but he rationalized it by pointing to the faults and failings of others. After a while, he began to feel comfortable in a lifestyle outside the church, without the obligation of callings and expectations of attending worship services and ministering to others. This continued for some time, but he began to feel ever more keenly the absence of the Holy Spirit. How close does D. Todd have to be to this guy to give us the play-by-play over this period of time? He continued for some time, but he began to feel ever more keenly the absence of the Holy Spirit, God's presence in his life. By experience, he knew that what it was like to have day by day the comfort. This is someone very close to D. Todd. Day by day, the comfort, guidance, and confidence born of the Spirit, and he missed it. Finally, he did what was needed to repent and qualify once more for baptism of water and of the Spirit. I want to know, D. Todd, are you talking about Wade? Okay. Let's go to Bill and then to Rebecca. And what are your thoughts about this whole fiasco?
Yeah, let me start. I'm going to put a couple of slides back up that you went over. One here, when he does the searches on his computer, in Ohio, do clergy have to report child abuse confessions? This only makes sense to me. Again, the Ohio bishop or Ohio stake president is going to do whatever the Ohio bishop or Ohio stake president does. One way that you can influence when you're Wade is to have somebody higher up when he calls the hotline, when that Ohio bishop or Ohio stake president calls the hotline, that the church higher up, its legal team can, if the confessions are, let me say it this way, if reporting is not mandatory, they can inform that bishop not to report it. That's happened in the past. One idea is that he's doing the search just to know for his own conscience how this is going to proceed forward. But another way to see this is that he's able to sort of sense what can and can't be done. And based on whatever it is, he could reach out to his Utah brother and have his brother and the church leadership instruct the legal team to instruct the local leadership to handle it a particular way. Now, is it that? Is it not? Who knows? We have no idea. But I just want people, when they read this, to not just think it's him trying to figure out what's going to happen next. He might be trying to figure out where he can influence things. In the next one, when he also admits that he sent a text indicating he was sorry and planned to meet with his bishop to start the repentance process. He's already played this game out before. His way of getting away from accountability is to try to get his family to understand that this is a church matter, not a secular law enforcement matter. And so by sending the family a text, again, I've never even had a thought of doing this kind of thing to a child. But for somebody who is trying to get away from it and is Mormon in a system that has trained its members to see the religious authority as having more power, more rights to handle things than law enforcement or the secular world, it makes so much sense to me as someone who spent a few decades in Mormonism to see that all he's trying to do here is go like, look, I've got it. It's taken care of. Don't you go any further with this. I got this. I promise. I'm going to behave. I'm going to repent. I'm going to talk to my bishop. And so you need not see these kinds of things as an honest admission of like, oh, I'm so sorry. I really did a thing and I feel bad for it. I don't think that's going on in this guy's head because he's been doing this essentially his entire adulthood and gotten away with it up until this moment. But there are 25 moments before this moment, some of them we know about and some of them we surely don't, where he has gotten away with it and has played out these things. He knows by now what things generally work and how to best give him the chance to get around it.
Rebecca?
Yeah, I think his strategies have worked very well before, like you said, Bill, for decades. In fact, we know from Floodlit, from talking to different people, that he and the state president early on in the 90s were friends, and they believe that's why there wasn't the discipline that needed to happen, right? It was an old boys club kind of, and he knew he could rely on the church to cover things up, to treat it just like that, an old boys situation. And it wasn't until, he moved, different leadership, that he finally was, called on the carpet for what he was doing, excommunicated. But I believe this whole scenario was handled, from the beginning when it all blew up in November. I think there's a reason he traveled to Utah. I think there was a war room in Salt Lake. I think everybody was telling everyone what to do. I think it was very carefully crafted. But I have a question for you, RFM, that I've not seen people talk about, and I'm very curious to get your opinion. I messaged Bill a headline, but I can just kind of go ahead and talk about it. Not only did he search in his initial search on his phone for who has to report what in what state, he searched for defense attorneys, right? So that tells me that initially he's like, okay, I got to get a defense attorney. I'm going to fight this. Can you tell us what it means, the fact that he pled guilty, just out of the blue? We hadn't heard anything for several months about what was happening. We knew he was still in jail. All of a sudden, guilty. There it is. Mm-hmm. Is it no discovery? Is that part of it? Obviously someone is pulling strings, in my opinion, behind this to encourage him to plead guilty. Wouldn't most people try to take a chance? I would just, that's the headline. Ohio man who searched defense attorneys for sex crimes online now pleads guilty. Can you just talk to us about what pleading guilty means and how it's different from what else could happen if he didn't plead guilty?
I expect discovery was completed and that the defense got the entirety of the state's case. I've never practiced in federal court, and I hear things are different there along those lines. But yeah, I would expect that they know everything. I mean, it's not like they're shooting in the dark when they pleaded guilty. What it means, by the way, what you're looking for is rationality, okay? And I have to caution you that sometimes looking for rationality in a guy who's been abusing kids for decades may be fruitless.
It could be, but what I'm kind of looking at is it in the church's interest to just have him plead guilty, done, right? It's no longer in the news cycle. It's over. That's kind of my take on it. Maybe that's too simplistic.
Well, it's a pretty good deal for a guy who they got the goods on him for doing all this stuff. I mean, he's got a chance of coming out of prison. It's not a good chance. And I did a little cursory research this afternoon. I didn't have a lot of time. Once again, I have not practiced in federal court, so this advice is worth what you're paying for it. But in Washington, my concern was this. I had a question in my mind as to whether this could end up at sentencing being a treatment instead of prison kind of scenario. Getting here in Washington, they call it a SOSA, special sex offender sentencing alternative, where you do some local time in the jail. You can do up to 365 days, but the 10 years, you wouldn't do. You do treatment instead. And as long as you do the treatment okay and don't have any problems with, and certainly don't reoffend, then you can continue that way. But if you do have problems with your treatment, or you do reoffend, then you're brought back in, and you just go for the full time that you were originally sentenced to. The cursory research that I did indicates that there is no such kind of program in the federal law. So I'm not sure. Like I say, I haven't practiced that way, but it doesn't sound like that's what's going to happen at the end of this. It does sound like there's going to be a sentence, and it sounds like it's 10 years to life, and that it should be kind of, I suppose, perfunctory at this point. Maybe maybe the judge can say life. I don't know. Go ahead, Bill.
And so then it's out of the news. It's over. That's kind of my point I'm trying to make. Had he not pled guilty, wouldn't there then be, it would still be in the news. There'd be.
You seem really, really determined to make a conspiracy out of this, Rebecca.
I love
at some point,
theories.
every case is out of the news. Even the Lindbergh baby kidnapping finally passed out of the news a few weeks ago.
I still think about that. So I don't know. I just have always felt someone is running it. There's a showrunner behind everything that's going on with Wade and Todd, and they're all, reacting to this war room that's putting it all together. So I don't know. I guess we're done now, huh?
Well, he will be sentenced at some point, and we'll probably report on that, and that'll be anticlimactic. Yeah. I mean, when the minimum is likely more than the maximum, this is the situation you're in. This happens, I mean, this happens with people who are older, and frankly, the odds are if you're older and committing crimes, it's this kind of a crime. It's the way it is. But you get in these situations where you've got all this stuff on him, and that's an obvious life sentence. I mean, they'd be over 100. And can you give them something to where they could at least think, maybe I can get out, even though that's probably not going to happen? It's not the healthiest of environments, prison, unless he's going to be working out in the yard every day with the boys. Yeah. So, and by the way, he could feel bad about it. He could feel bad about it. He's either playing the system, like Bill says, or he's a tortured soul. And I don't know which.
But if he had not pled guilty, would details come out? Would there be more details? Would there be some kind of legal process where details came out?
What kind of details are you talking about?
In other words, what Rebecca's saying is that in the matter of doing the trial, isn't Todd Christofferson and other people other people are going to have to testify about when this got known, when people found out, when things got talked about?
No, none of that's relevant. None of that's relevant to the criminal charge. And a lot of times people don't understand that because they think more in terms of a civil case. Even civil cases are limited to evidence that's relevant to the things you got to prove. But in a criminal case, the evidence, the relevant evidence, the evidence is limited to relevant evidence, and relevant evidence means evidence that tends to prove or disprove the elements of the offense. Did this person do this crime at this time and in this place? That's basically it. Not when people found out about it. Okay. Unless they find out about it from Wade, and then it can come in as evidence as an exception to the hearsay rule. So,
that's but why we have a lawyer on staff.
If there's a conversation between D. Wade and church leadership and perhaps his brother after the crime, after the search engine, looking for a lawyer, drives out to Utah, it does make sense to me that D. Todd might be able to say, yes, my brother sat down with me and said he did it. And there might be other questions around that. When's the earliest you knew that your brother did this thing? And there seems like there would be evidence inside the church about leadership knowing things that led to them removing the annotation, for instance, that I think in some way might have an impact on guilt or innocence or the degree to which one can prove so in this particular case.
I don't know. I just think that it's not really that relevant. I know everybody wants to know it. I mean, I've got all those questions that I put on the slides, right? On that musing slide of mine. And those 6 questions at the end, yeah, I would like to know. I just don't see how any of them would be answered in any relevant way to a criminal trial in a case like this.
Yeah. I will say one last thing, which is because it crossed state lines, it became a federal case.
Yes.
I don't mean interesting in a good way, but it might have been interesting to see what the church would have done having the influence it does in Utah with, again, lobbying politicians who are church broke, 9 out of 10 politicians being Mormon. What would have gone differently if this had been entirely a Utah case?
Yeah, I don't know. By the way, here's the problem. Okay, let's say let's say Wade talked to Todd and confessed to Todd. Okay, besides the obvious, the penant, the privilege, the priest penitent privilege, how are you ever going to find that out? You can never find that out as a criminal attorney. I mean, you can't talk to Wade unless it's in the police reports that Wade reported to the police that he talked to his brother Todd. Okay, now you can go talk to Todd. And if Todd says, I don't want to talk to you, then you get the judge to say, well, you're going to have to talk. I'm sorry. If that were in the police report, that would be an exception. But I haven't heard anything remotely like that.
Well, thank you for your coverage. And we will update everybody on, I guess the sentencing will be the next. So, and we don't know when that's going to happen. So
back to you, Rebecca.
Yeah. And now on to Bill, who has another difficult story to go through. We put these all at the top, didn't we? At least we're getting them over with. Oh my goodness.
Yeah. So this week we've got the update on Wade, which falls into this category, although not new. And this one, though, is new. Rebecca, you were originally, I think, going to cover this story. I reached out to you and said, I know this guy. And I said, can I please have this for that reason alone? Anyway, I've got to take this one down, put this one up. Whoop, there we go. So a Southern Utah man, Michael Kleiner, 32 years old, has been arrested and charged with 6 first-degree felony counts of aggravated sexual exploitation of a minor, along with 13 third-degree felony counts of distributing harmful material to a minor and 1 misdemeanor count of enticing a minor. 19 felonies, 1 misdemeanor, 20 total charges. According to the charging documents, an undercover officer posing as a 17-year-old girl made contact with Michael online. Police say he knew the supposed girl's age, moved the conversation to Telegram. I've never even heard of Telegram. Discussed having sex with her and sent sexual photographs and recordings. Investigators later learned that Michael was also a suspect in a separate West Jordan investigation involving an officer posing as a 15-year-old girl. If you think those are the only 2 people he had talked to online thinking they were children, when arrested, he admitted having sexual conversations with at least 2 people he believed were underage girls. How many people do you know that I've talked to? 2? Well, then, yeah, I might have talked to 2. Police moved quickly on the arrest because Michael was a teacher working with children in similar age ranges. Oop, I've got this here. This is the charges. I'll finish up that here in a second. But reported charges here, these are some of them. Distribute material harmful to a minor, aggravated sexual exploitation of a minor, enticing a minor, 3rd degree felony sexual activity. So there's that. But I'll note here, this story is difficult. I don't have that finished sentence there. Police moved quickly on the arrest because Michael was a teacher working with children in similar age ranges. It noted that they felt that there was a risk in leaving him in place as a teacher, and that they had to act quickly because they didn't know who he was a threat to. And so the rest of that paragraph was that they took care of this immediately. And I got to sort of know some of this as it was kind of happening, because for this reason, this story is especially personal to me, difficult for me, because I actually know the person involved. Michael Kleiner and I worked together at Family Pond for years. That's actually a picture in the top right corner there. That's a picture of me on the left and a picture of him on the right. We're standing right next to each other for the photo. I know his brother. He's good looking. He's intelligent. He's easy to talk to. And from what I know, he was a deeply committed Latter-day Saint who strived to live as Mormonism. The whole time I knew him, he was attending church, and we've got more information on his callings in the church, but he wasn't someone just hanging around the edges of the church. He served as second counselor. By the way, thank you, Rebecca, for this. He served as second counselor in the bishopric. of the St. George Young Single Adult 4th Ward, which is Spanish speaking, from March 23 to May 24. Then he served as a stake clerk in the St. George Young Single Adult First Stake from January 2025 until just 2 days ago, maybe 3 days ago now at this point, July 8th, 2026. He was also a teacher 4 days ago, 5 days ago. He was also a teacher at Snow Canyon. Sorry, I wrote this in when we did this.
The same day as the arrest. Let's say that. That's
he was released like that.
Yeah, yeah.
His church calling came to a close.
Yeah.
He was also a teacher at Snow Canyon Middle School, teaching English as a second language. I know that he went on a mission, Spanish-speaking mission. I know at Family Pond, whenever we had a Spanish-speaking customer, it was always, if Michael was in the store, Michael's the person who would engage the customer because he spoke Spanish so well. We had 4 stores in our company, and we had maybe 3 or 4 employees who spoke really good Spanish, and Michael was one of those. He occupied multiple positions of trust, both in his religious community and in his secular community, serving in the school as a teacher, and had regular access to young people on both sides of that. So there's that. Mm-hmm. I'll just note here, Mr. Kleiner is 32 years old, single, never been married. From what I observed, despite being, I think, an attractive, intelligent, socially capable, he struggled to form long-term romantic relationships. And I just was sitting there thinking, I'm like, now put that person inside Mormonism, where celibacy is required before marriage, masturbation's a sin, any viewing of pornography is routinely called an addiction and a moral failure. And for a 32-year-old unmarried, faithful Mormon man, the expectation is essentially lifelong celibacy until an eternal companion is found. And I note here, don't misunderstand me, sexual repression doesn't make someone pursue minors, and millions of sexually repressed people never do anything remotely like what Michael Kleiner is charged with doing. But having thought a lot about this kind of space and the pressure that Mormonism puts on people, especially younger people, we all recognize what is chronically suppressed, shamed and denied healthy expression does not usually disappear. So when things are suppressed, when shame's involved, when we deny humans a healthy expression of their just authentic humanity, those things don't just go away. Often it goes underground. Sometimes sexuality shows up in the shadows precisely because a person has never learned how to integrate it into a healthy inner life. There's an image there from his employment. He was let go from there immediately too. He's been fired. Michael Kleiner, ESL and study skills. So there's that one. There's a picture of him on his mission. There's a picture with him at the temple. Michael checked a hell of a lot of behavioral boxes: bishopric counselor, state clerk, teacher, faithful active member. But being a good Mormon or being a teacher and being psychologically a healthy human are not the same thing. A system, Mormonism, obsessed with behavioral compliance can sometimes produce people who look extraordinarily clean on the outside, while never teaching them to honestly examine what's happening underneath in their internal world. And even bypassing the adult work of understanding, integrating, and taking responsibility for their own desires. Sexuality, loneliness, shame, unmet needs, those are all things that people have to confront and deal with. And Mormonism focuses so much on the outward expression, the outward behaviors, checking the boxes. And what often goes unworked on in Mormonism is all the stuff that's turning around inside a person. So when righteousness is measured primarily by what you don't do, you can become remarkably skilled at suppression without ever becoming emotionally healthy. You learn how to pass the interview, hold the calling, and perform worthiness, while parts of you that don't fit the approved Mormon identity get pushed further and further into the shadows. Now, I'm going to admit something personal here. I worked with Michael quite a bit, and his brother even more. And while generally they were both great towards me, there were times I felt looked down upon and judged by them. And I know others who have left the church at times would feel that because, we were the apostates. We were the ones who left the church. And I don't say that now to take a cheap victory lap. I actually find this incredibly sad. There's an irony here that's hard for me to ignore. And I'll just note, sometimes the apostate who has supposedly lost the spirit gets to build a healthier inner world precisely because he or she finally escaped a system of shame, judgment, repression, and arbitrary rules that can turn normal parts of being human, such as sexuality, into evidence of spiritual failure. I'm making this connection because I know this, I'll say kid, he's younger than me, he's 32, but when I worked with him, he's in his late 20s, mid 20s. And as I worked with him, I would never have expected this. This to me was a good human being trying to do good in the world. But I think a lot of folks inside high demand systems get strained so much to pretend to be a thing. I'll just say here again, none of that excuses what Michael is accused of doing. If these allegations are true, the responsibility for those choices fall fully 100% on him. Full stop. This image there to the right is another image that you got from me, Rebecca. Says here, Michael says, call me old-fashioned, but I prefer this type of material to electronics any day. So he loves the hard copy of the scriptures and manuals. Full stop. I said, but if all we do is call him a monster, put him in jail, and congratulate ourselves for identifying a bad person, I'll just say we learn absolutely nothing. I knew this guy. I worked next to him. He was trusted by his school, trusted by his church. I never would have thought him capable of such. He sat in a bishopric, served as a state clerk, but according to police, his life was moving in an extraordinarily dark direction. As we cover child sex abuse week after week after week within Mormonism, maybe we should be asking whether a religion so focused on the appearance of worthiness has confused outward compliance with the health of one's inner world. Because sexuality does not disappear when you shame it. Desire does not vanish when you call it sin, and sometimes the shadow grows precisely in the places where a person has been taught never to turn on the light. And I'll just say again, he gets what he gets coming to him. He did what he did. He's admitted it himself, so there's no need to say allegations here. He's acknowledged to the police that he's done exactly what he's being accused of. But I'll just note this will continue to happen more regularly per 1,000 people in a religious system that treats normal humanity a certain way, gives people the cover of bad behavior, and often seeks to protect the abuser and its own reputation over that of victims. I think we'll continue to see this week after week after week. Any thoughts from you two?
Some time ago, there was a person who, I'm so sorry to bring this up, but there was a guy, and I can't remember his name, but he was big in the Kirtland community back when it was owned by the Reorganites, and he would do tours and things, and then he ended up killing himself because it was coming out that he was molesting children. Do you remember that?
Yeah, Kimball. He was an ex-Mormon, correct?
I'm not sure.
Yeah.
I didn't know him.
Yeah, he was an ex-Mormon and was a major participant in the post-Mormon space. Somebody, Tom Kimball. Yeah, that's it. Yeah, it's not exclusively a problem. If I don't know what your point you're going to make, by the way, please.
The point I was going to make, and I'll let you finish your point before I ask your question. The question based on that.
Yeah, I'll just note that this isn't an exclusive problem to one side or the other. There are child molesters and pedophiles everywhere. But in a system that behaves the way Mormonism does, I can't help but think it's more prevalent.
Yeah, that actually wasn't the point, but it's important to point out like you did. So good. The question I want to ask based upon that was, I remember that when that happened, there were a number of people, because this guy was popular and a lot of people knew him. A lot of people in our space knew him, and they were really, really rocked that someone that they knew that seemed so not just normal, but likable could be doing this all the time that they know them, right? And I was wondering if you had any similar feelings, Bill, about this guy.
I was surprised when it came out. I didn't think, you never know anybody. But I didn't, my first thought wasn't like, oh, he's innocent. It was, no, I'm going to, again, start with the benefit to the victims. And so my first assumption was he's guilty. And then the moment I started to read details and got more information, within 20 minutes of first hearing it, it was confirmed to me through other things that it was true. There's no part of me that needs to protect him. He went after children to cause them harm that would hurt a kid in such a way that they would never be the same ever again the rest of their life.
Yes.
Yeah.
But how do you feel that you can be so completely fooled? Did you already know that?
Yeah. See, this is where no. So let me say it this way.
Yeah.
I don't think I was fooled. What I saw was a kid in his mid-20s, late 20s, who'd gotten back from his mission and, served in the church at the drop of a hat for anything. He was everywhere he was supposed to be. But again, now he's 32 years old and he is having such trouble forming, again, a long relationship. I think his maybe emotional maturity is somewhere much younger. Because you grow up in Mormonism, I think some people are treated in such a way that they just don't grow up to become a fully functioning 32-year-old adult. And I think this is a person who turned to their unhealthy inclinations, and they were also manipulated by a system to see themselves in unhealthy ways and to be trained to do one thing in the shadows and to show up another way out in public. And I think Mormonism did that maybe to all of us.
Thank you for indulging me. You want to weigh in on that, Rebecca, or you just want to keep on with the newscast?
Keep on nodding. No, I'll just say I agree with what both of you said. And I think I've always said that we're trained to be liars, or as you said, Bill, to have a different persona. And it's hard for a lot of us to realize that somebody can have a very secret side of themselves and do things that you could never imagine, and yet have this forward-facing persona. And as you read through the callings of both people we just discussed, Wade and Michael, they had access to everyone continually. And I'm sure they were popular and beloved and the great guy. And no parent is going to worry about this. And I think this is why we continue to cover it. It's very difficult to cover. It's so important is just, if somebody can get the idea, you know what, I just need to watch out. Good guys, great, but I need to watch my kids. And I think in the LDS Church, you're not thinking that. It's a place of great trust because you have to ignore your intuition, your instincts. You have to put a lot of things on hold to be a part of the LDS Church. And then when you have protecting kids, unfortunately, a lot of times you put those instincts on hold. So I would say trust your instincts, but look at these positions of trust that both these men that we just reported on were in. And you just can't ever know somebody's heart, So it's hard to report, but we'll keep doing it, right? I mean, we spend a whole hour usually at the top of every show talking about it, but I guess it has to be done. So thank you, Bill. That was a difficult story. And I guess you'll update us if you hear anything else since you're close to it. So, all right. I can't even think of a good segue into the next story. So I'm just going to start. There's nothing that's going to be appropriate. So have you guys heard of this? This is really interesting. The Big 12, we're talking about sports here, the title says, is the Big 12 short-sighted in title naming the rights deal with Monster Energy? Basically what I'm trying to say, I'm kind of stumbling over the title here, I'm still recovering from our last segment, is that Monster Energy is sponsoring the Big 12, meaning that BYU has to kind of align itself and promote Monster Energy. This could be problematic. A summary of the article says the Big 12 Conference new sponsorship deal with Monster Energy is generating debate, especially among fans of schools like BYU. Under the multi-year agreement, football and men's and women's basketball will officially be branded as Monster Energy Big 12 football and Monster Energy Big 12 basketball. Monster's logo will also appear on the uniforms of the players, right? You got your BYU blue. You're going to have something that says Monster Energy on it. And it will also appear on the fields, the basketball courts, conference-controlled broadcasts, meaning they're sitting there interviewing. They're going to be downing monsters, having a monster there on the table in front of you, right? Monster mug, all those kinds of things. The deal is reportedly worth about $20 million per year, with each member school expected to receive roughly $1 million annually. Now they can have other individual sponsorship deals. BYU can, do other things, but not with another energy drink. So this is it. And if you're not familiar with Mormonism and our health code, if you guys are never Mormons watching this, you might say, what's the big deal? I think you guys can pretty much guess what the big deal is. The article goes on to say it questions whether the conference may be sacrificing long-term brand value for a short-term financial boost. Critics argue that attaching the conference's identity to an energy drink company could cheapen the Big 12 brand and create an awkward fit for institutions like BYU. People are already thinking about BYU, who's sponsoring church council's members to avoid coffee and has cautioned against high caffeine energy drinks, even though they are not prohibited officially under the word of wisdom. And they're not. And we'll talk about that. It goes on to say some people think it's a great deal, but very problematic for BYU. BYU right now does not sell highly caffeinated energy drinks on campus. They are not allowed to sell them. They do not sell them. A student cannot purchase an energy drink on campus. So if you see your quarterback walking through campus with a logo of an energy drink or maybe a sweatshirt with the energy drink, you can't go, I'm going to go over to the Twilight Zone or the Creamery and I'm going to get one of those, because they're not sold at BYU. While the university lifted its longstanding ban on caffeinated soda drinks, and that was my era, no caffeine anywhere on campus. It was very clandestine. Creameries intentionally, the official dining services and campus creameries intentionally prohibit energy drinks, any beverage containing prohibited ingredients like coffee or green tea. That's the devil's juice right there. Green tea and coffee extract are strictly removed from the shelves. Have you guys heard about this at all? RFM and then Bill.
Well, no, but they opened Pandora's box when they legalized Coca-Cola. So,
Yes.
you get what you tolerate, BYU.
Yep. That's it.
We've come a long way. Back when my friend Chris Bloxam went to school at BYU, there were no soda drinks, of course, no caffeinated soda drinks. No. And but he would buy them in bulk, put them in his refrigerator in his dorm room, and he would sell them to people when they knocked on the door and wanted one of the caffeinated soda, Pepsi and Coke, etc. The church has come a long way on this, but I don't think they've come this far that, as you're going to get into here, some of the interesting flavors of Monster energy drinks.
And
I get about the green tea. I get about the tea and the coffee, right? But you're saying just any energy drink, even without tea or coffee in it.
It usually is because of the extract, but they are also concerned, high sugar, high caffeine. I mean, all those things. I know it seems very hypocritical. You can't drink that one little cup of coffee, right? I even made a meme about that where Sister Julie Beck was saying, not one single drop of coffee, but Monster Energy, go for it, right? I think I forgot to put that in the slides. But yeah, this is the problem here. And I have to laugh when you tell the story about Chris, because that was me. And when I worked at BYU, you could not only not purchase caffeinated drinks like Coke, I couldn't put them in the communal refrigerator, at the BYU library. I had to buy my own little refrigerator under my desk, smuggle in my Diet Coke, because everybody was drinking Diet Coke and it was not allowed on campus. So why are energy drinks a problem just on the surface here? Well, like you guys pointed out, a lot of them contain green tea. Here are some of the brands here: Rehab Monster Green Tea, Monster Energy Dragon Tea, Green Tea, Nasty Beast Green Tea, because green tea is a healthful supplement. So they're going to put them in these, boost in the energy drink. And that's a problem at BYU. It says BYU operates under the church education system honor code, which explicitly requires students to abstain from tea, coffee, alcohol, and tobacco. And it goes on to say you're not going to see that sold on campus. Also, as you guys pointed out, they have the Java Monster. Okay. Will BYU be required to sit at some kind of press conference with a Java Monster in front of them? I don't know. I have no idea how this is going to work. Are they going to have to get an exemption and reveal to the world how strange they are, that they can't go near a Monster energy drink? I don't know. I did design this here. That's the statue at BYU of Brigham Young, and he is downing a Monster energy drink. Is this the kind of PR that they're going to expect BYU to do? I don't know. I went over to the church website because, as it stated, this is not explicitly in the word of wisdom. Neither is swig soda, right? There's only a few things, most of them healthy, coffee, tea, that is excluded. But look at these articles, right? Let me see. I can't read them because they're too small. But they say things like, this is from the church website, the energy drink addiction, energy drinks, the lift that lets you down, the energy drink epidemic. Now, I don't know if these are here today. They may have taken them down, but they were there a couple days ago when I was trying to grab something for slides. So they're kind of in a pickle here. Let's just say that. There was a story that we reported on a couple months ago where some students discovered, oh my goodness, clutch your pearls. There were green tea extract flavorings in some kind of this drink here at the creamery. They alerted the people in charge of acquiring things, and they instantly took it off the shelves. So they take steps wherever they see green tea, the appearance of evil. And what happens to those steps now that their team, their flagship team, is going to be sponsored by these drinks and be expected to promote them through signs on the field, logos on your uniform, and promotional appearances? Exactly what we said here. BYU did not sell caffeine until 2017. I think this is important. Now it does sell Coca-Cola products. BYU claims we just had so many people asking for it that we decided to go ahead and offer them. That can't be the case because we all asked for them for decades and nothing happened. But here it says the university reversed its longstanding policy, signed an exclusive contract with Coca-Cola. Okay, that sounds kind of lucrative, an exclusive contract. I wonder if that's the common denominator between Monster and Coca-Cola being on campus.
All I can say is thank God they didn't sign the exclusive contract with Pepsi.
Well, yeah, no, it has to be Coke. I agree. I'm with you on that one. So anyway, people are already, just kind of poking fun or pointing out the irony of this. There are caffeine-free Monster energy drinks, but they've been discontinued, as I read, because of lack of demand, or they're really hard to get. But somebody made the joke that maybe BYU will wear the caffeine-free Monster patch, to reflect their religious.
Why would you have a caffeine-free energy drink?
Exactly. Well, no sugar. You would just amp up the sugar, and you'd probably put a lot of green tea in it because, again, that's seen as a boost and a healthful benefit. So I don't know. It's kind of fascinating, and I'm sure they'll get some kind of exemption. But won't it be interesting to see those signs on the field? That is what they're supposed to do given this new contract. Any final thoughts on that, RFM, and then Bill?
Nothing more for me.
I'll just say you showed the picture of the coffee stuff.
Yeah.
I think it's interesting. Monster makes so many different things. One is the energy drinks, like you point out. A lot of them come from green tea. They've got their whole lineup of coffee products. And here the church school is in some ways sort of forced into being with the rest of the Big 12. And yeah, you really don't get your say anymore, do you? You can't have your coffee and drink it too.
I almost feel like if this were going to be a story in the Leahona, they would say, even though we were a member of the Big 12, when they asked us to do something that went against our morals and health code, we had to say no, and we bowed out. Wouldn't that be an incredibly inspiring story if they said no?
Very inspiring.
Yeah, I would be completely inspired. I don't think it's going to happen, but wouldn't that be interesting?
I like your monster green background on your slides.
I did try to choose something that was monstery. So, all right, what do we have up next? Oh, speaking of monstery, RFM, tell us what is happening with Jacob Hansen again. I have not followed this very closely, so I'm listening with all ears.
Well, Jacob Hansen has decided to officially lose his mind. He's divided, he's confused, and nothing shows it more than two things that happened recently. And the first thing that happened is we got two video clips here, folks. One is from last Friday, I think it was. It might have been shortly before that. I can't remember. It's of recent vintage, where he totally lost his stuff on Ward Radio. And you got Cardinellis there reacting. Now, what we have here, this is from last Wednesday's show, Bill. So last Wednesday show, we played it, right? Then I played it again on Friday's show. So that has two instances of me. It's me, watching him. Now it's going to be me watching him, which should be totally meta. I'm really looking forward to that. But this is what Jacob Hansen says the first time. We got two videos. This is the first time. This is when he stuck his foot in his mouth over and over again.
Give me just a second. There we go. Start the show off.
Well, thank you. It is July 8th. It is 2026 for the record. And I think it was today that it was released as a Facebook short over at Psych Ward Radio. This clip of Jacob Hansen going absolutely nuclear. I mean, you actually have to see this to believe it. Jacob Hansen, let's see if I can get this on the screen. Here we go. And I'll start it going. Jacob Hansen putting the psych in Psych Ward Radio. Let's see what he has to say.
Are people willing to die for this church anymore? How many people are willing to die for it?
Yeah.
As a percentage. Okay, let's say today it's 30%. But how many was in the pioneer era? It was like 90%. If you start to take your core membership and actually give them something to really believe in and be united around, you'll get something. And here's the thing, we're not united. We're incredibly divided because we've lost our sense of who we are as Latter-day Saints. You have such a wide variety of, see, we talk about diversity as though it's a strength. Let me tell you something. Ideological diversity is a cancer. And in the church, we have ideological diversity to where you go everywhere, you have people cheering for Charlie Bird, who is literally with his gay partner, purchasing a child because they want to be parents. They're going to have a baby created through in vitro fertilization of another woman, and they're going to deprive a child of its mother. And there are active, faithful Latter-day Saints cheering for Charlie Bird and his partner as they deny a child their mother. And we are divided on that issue as Latter-day Saints. Me bringing this up is controversial. Are you kidding me? Are people willing to die for this church anymore? How?
Hey, Bill, there was a little bit more of us.
Say that again, RFM.
There was a little bit more of us in the clip.
Oh, okay. Here, I'm so sorry.
You stopped the clip prematurely.
Let me go back.
Yeah, don't cut RFM off. We don't do that. We know better than that.
Well, there's Bill too.
And
I'm going to want to hear from you first, Rebecca. Okay.
Here we go.
Oh my God.
Deny a child
It's mother.
their mother. And we are divided on that issue as Latter-day Saints. Me bringing this up is controversial. Are you kidding me? Are people willing to die for this church anymore? How?
I'm sorry. This is so funny on so many levels. The best funny part are the looks that Carden keeps giving, because it's like, I think this is probably smart, but I'm not sure.
I see Carden rolling his eyes as if he knows Jacob Hansen as being the village idiot, which is, to be honest, saying a lot.
Yes, when the village idiot thinks you're the village idiot, you've got a problem, Jacob. There we go, Rebecca. While we're waiting for Jacob's testicles to drop, what do you think about that clip?
Yeah, I think when even Carden Ellis, you can see he's kind of going, okay, yeah, I can't really go, yeah, on this because there's several things wrong with what he's saying. So yeah, even when you're disturbing Carden Ellis, I think you've jumped the shark. You've gone too far. So yeah, and that rant, yeah, people do that, and there's a lot of to say that whole mother thing, yeah, that's ridiculous.
Wow. Okay. Well, thank you for that. You know, he apparently some guy who I don't know Did you want to say anything else about that, Bill, before I go on? I don't mean to speed past you.
No. I've commented on it already the first time around. We just
I know,
talked.
and you did great. I loved it. So, but the deal is this, is that some guy apparently made a response, a video response to him, basically saying that, he seems like a very nice fellow, saying, I see it differently. Somebody out there in the podcasting world said this, about ideological stuff being a cancer and uniformity and, all that Zig Heil kind of stuff. And I think that in the Mormon church, because he's obviously a member too, that generally revelation has come about because of ideological diversity and challenging, right? So this is something that our good friend Jacob Hansen right now is being fitted for a straitjacket. This is how he responds to it. And this you've got to see, okay? And I want to hear once again, first from you, Rebecca, and then from you, Bill, once we've allowed Jacob to respond to this. And that's the next video clip that we have. Let me see if I can find this. Oh, actually, I think you have it, Bill. I think this is from today.
Please feel free to correct me if I'm wrong, but an LDS influencer recently argued that ideological diversity is a cancer.
I sure did.
And I actually think the exact opposite is true. I think ideological diversity is the bedrock of revelation.
Ooh, let's hear it.
As I've studied church history, I've learned that revelation is messy. The restoration has never advanced because everyone agreed. It has advanced because faithful people brought difficult questions to each other and to the Lord.
But why would they take it to the Lord if their diversity of opinion on the matter was their strength? Don't you see the very reason that we seek revelation is so that we can know the truth? And when a collective group of people know what the truth is, there is no longer ideological diversity. For example, not too long ago, we had the opinion that Black people were less valiant in the pre-existence. Was it good that we had that variety and diversity of opinion about that matter? Would it be good if we brought back that sort of ideological diversity? Again, the whole point of revelation is to create unity around the truth. So no, ideological diversity is not the bedrock of revelation. It's the problem that revelation seeks to solve. And those who reject the Lord's revelations in favor of an ideological diversity are actually causing division and confusion in the kingdom. And that's why a love of ideological diversity is a cancer.
Jesus did not pray that his followers would be diverse. He prayed that they would be one. Modern revelation does not say be diverse, and if ye are not diverse, ye are not mine. It says be one. And if ye are not one, ye are not mine. We teach our members to concentrate their efforts to strengthen our unity, not to glorify our diversity.
So what do you think about that, Rebecca?
It makes my head hurt. I'm not kidding. His arguments are so circular. I can't even address them practically, except for to say that the priesthood ban was told to all of us that it was a revelation, right? It was of only some of the Q15 who would not move forward, and they had to fight to get it lifted. So that's ridiculous. And I don't know if he's looked at the makeup of the church lately, but diversity is here to stay. Sorry, Jacob. It absolutely is.
Bill, what do you think about diversity, ideological diversity, and the whole cancer thing?
Yeah, I'm going to go to this race and priesthood. Wasn't that a really bad example for him to use?
Horrible.
The argument that it was by not, we wouldn't want to go back to the diversity of having the people who still believe we should be doing the priesthood ban. But he's sort of going to the front of the line and using the modern moment to take that position. If we go back in time, wouldn't having some diversity of opinion be allowed and safe to discuss things? Wouldn't that have put out the bigotry and prejudice and the rigidity maybe of leaders much earlier? In other words, when George Albert Smith is writing Dr. Lowry Nelson, and telling him to get in line, don't be diverse. Don't you dare share your diverse opinions. This is doctrine. We know it's true. Doesn't that moment in time, isn't that actually the actual way we should use that issue and that moment in history to explain that diversity actually would help the church so much? Again, if you have the truth and the Holy Ghost and prophets, you need not fear opinions of people who are trying to suggest maybe there's a better perspective to have. But if you have arrogant leaders who are certain they are right and do not allow free expression or ideas of others that disagree with them, isn't that what leads to leaders carrying bad opinions, bad ideas of doctrine, bad concepts of theology, decades and decades and decades into the future, when the rest of us are like, that was stupid 3 decades ago?
And so was Jacob. So the whole thing about this is that well, of course, you're right. What he's doing is he's arguing against his own position. This is why it's so hard for you to make sense of, Rebecca, because it doesn't make any sense. Because back before 1978, okay, all right, it was the leadership of the church that said blacks can't have the priesthood, blacks can't go to the temple, they can't do any of that advanced stuff, because they're treated as second-class citizens in the church. And there were a couple of explanations for it, but that is a simple fact. That was the church leadership who did that. And in 1949, the first presidency issued a statement saying that this was the doctrine of the church and expressly stated it is not a policy of the church. So this was a doctrine, okay? The diversity of opinion on the issue was coming from people other than the leaders of the church, and pressure was being put also inside the church and outside the church, and a lot of it from outside the church. Believe me, that's where the diversity of opinion was coming on, that finally influenced the doctrine to change. And so it's just like, do you not know that we know this? I mean, Jacob, do you not think we know this? Do you think we're stupid? I'm guessing the people who follow you must think that you make sense, but you don't to me, you don't to Rebecca. Bill, does he make sense to you?
No, but he really never has.
Okay.
Isn't that the way everything, like celestial marriage being polygamy and us ending polygamy, us acknowledging that the book of Abraham really isn't the writings of Abraham written by his own hand, that the inspired translation of the Bible maybe isn't a restoration of the Bible in its original form being put back into place. Isn't diversity of opinion the way in which we got away from all of the bad things we used to think were absolutely true? It seems like
his diversity of opinion, ostensibly it's Mormonism, but it's not. It's Jacob Hansen's version of Mormonism. So ultimately what he means is he will not be satisfied until everybody thinks exactly the same as he does, which is a pleasant thing to think about.
Yeah. The only way his point of view actually works is if prophets and apostles are oblivious to all the outside noise. And even though the world gets louder and louder about a thing, and then 3 decades late, the brethren make a change, it's because God came down and talked to them, and it had nothing to do with the noise. And so the truth and right place to be is always just where the brethren are. When in reality, it is so crystal clear to me and you guys and everyone else out there watching that it is the people who raise a hand and go, it is the Lowry Nelsons of the world, the Eugene Englands of the world, the Sterling McMurrins, who say the thoughts out loud, and the brethren eventually go, oh yeah, we're probably not right on that. We probably need to change. We probably need to do something. Watson says the Hill Cumorah is in New York because Hinckley and the rest of the brethren in the first presidency of the time say the Hill Cumorah is in New York. And it's only when someone goes, hey guys, we probably don't want to do that. We want to say the hill's somewhere else because that hill's a clean hill. It's not in New York. And then the brethren go like, oh, let's take their opinion now and let's do it the way the apologists say, and Let's do it the way the defenders of our faith say, because our old view doesn't hold up anymore. It is the diversity of opinion that moves the narrative back towards something that can at least be somewhat tenable, 3% tenable, rather than holding the old points of view. Diversity is crucial to the ongoing restoration.
Right. And if everybody has the same opinion, then you don't need any revelation, because nobody's going to go to God to ask for anything new. By the way, Rebecca, I think the reason why this is difficult to understand and made your head hurt is because if you boil it down, I think what his argument amounts to is this. Jacob Hansen is using the past discrimination of the LDS Church in order to justify the ongoing discrimination of the LDS Church.
I think you're right. And I think it wasn't that I didn't understand it. I chose not to try to understand it because it did make my head hurt. But the other thing he doesn't understand is the makeup of the Q15. And we all know this, especially on the issue of diversity. They have to agree. They must agree. They sit in that room until they agree. If there is diversity, you heard Oaks say, be one. They have to be one. That's how it works, even when they do disagree. And in order to lift that ban, we've all read Second Class Saints. They had to maneuver. They had to trick some of the members who would never be on board. They had to do that. They had to jockey around it because it's insisted that there is no diversity among the brethren. They're of one mind, but they're not. They're not even today. There's a big difference in what a lot of them think, but they're never allowed to express it or enact anything that would express that or make changes. So it's a horrible system. And that's my next story if we're done with this one. Do you have any more on this, RFM? Have we done it to death? It's a horrible system. That's a good segue.
I'm just enjoy watching Jacob Hansen flame out in real time.
I just don't even know how some of his followers could be on board with that. It's very convoluted. Okay, let's see. Yeah, I think, yes, there we go. Okay, good old Mitt Romney. This was he was not even talking about the LDS Church in this article at all. It's an article on The Hill, and the headline is Romney on running in 2028. They said, hey, are you going to run again, right? Because 3 times is the charm. And he says 80-year-olds shouldn't be running the world, right? Shouldn't be in a position of governing, which is a very interesting statement to make. He says
it should be reserved exclusively for 90-year-olds.
And that's it. Let's get rid of those 80-year-olds. It's all about 90. 90 is the new 80. It's perfect. But the article, we don't have to go through the whole thing. Just know that he was asked that, will you run? And he said, I basically think people who are 80 and above really should not be running the world or running the country, he said to Deseret News. He cited research about decreased brain capacity with age, right? Oh, that's interesting. He points out that the human brain shrinks by 20% by the time you're 80. And then I don't know what the percentage is as you hit 85, 90, 95, 100. We can keep going when we're talking about our upper leadership. So I don't know if he said all this ironically. I don't know if he thought it through. I guess the idea is that God chooses the next prophet by killing the present prophet, right? And so as long as God wants him in, it's going to be just fine. So I had to make this chart because I was thinking, how many of them were over 80? And we're talking 13 out of the 17 prophets were over the age of 80. And you can see the problem as medicine gets better and better, they're living longer and longer, because I know they get very, very specialized care and treatment. And look at some of these ages. This is the age of when they passed away in the last column. President Nelson, of course, was the very oldest, but had a lot of brain shrinkage there, right? In the upper leadership. And we've talked about this before, so many reasons why there should be some kind of an emeritus, some kind of a retirement, some kind of an out. There's so many different reasons. Be kind. Let someone who's elderly go home. There's that such sad story about President Monson. Somebody came across him. He's sitting in a hall outside of a meeting and he goes, hi, I don't know why I'm here. They just told me to sit here, right? Let that man go home and sit with his family. So another thing that I always talk about when I talk about, these aging over 80 is the power vacuum. What is a power vacuum and what does that mean? And this kind of ties into what we were talking about with Jacob Hansen. So hold on, let me change my phone here so I can read this. I know my slides are so small here. Okay, so oops, hold on. Now I've got to scroll all the way down. Sorry, bear with me here. Okay, so what is a power vacuum? What am I talking about? And what are examples of this? Since David O. McKay, several presidents of the church have served their final weeks, months, and years totally incapacitated, not capable of fulfilling the requirements of their callings entailed. During these periods of incapacitation, typically the counselors take over the duties of the president. And we see this. Whoever's the current prophet, he's already been running the church for a number of years, right, as a counselor. In the Mormon Land interview, this is Greg Prince, wonderful Greg Prince, outlines the damage that these temporary leaders have wreaked throughout history. And these are a couple examples. When David O. McKay was losing his marbles in the late 60s, Hugh Brown attempted to change the standing policy doctrine associated with those of African descent and the temple. He butted heads with Harold B. Lee and other apostles, so much so that following McKay's death, Brown was demoted from the first presidency. And Matt Harris has a book coming out this summer about this topic, QB Brown. You'll see this. These things happen in this power vacuum when there's not a strong leader at the top holding the reins, taking control. When Kimball was losing it in the early 80s, the apostles that conspired against the Arrington Historical Department successfully had them removed and moved down to BYU, forever changing the church's trajectory toward historiography and I guess hiring lawyers going forward. So these changes all happen when you don't have a strong leader at the helm. When Benson went cuckoo, the excommunication of the September 6th took place, causing intellectuals in the church to not engage Mormonism in fear of rejection. And one of the most notable ones that I think we all can remember, when Monson slipped away mentally, Nelson and company instituted the November 15th policy, and we all know the implications of that decision. Mm-hmm. In essence, the power vacuum associated with the aging gerontocracy has caused issue after issue in this church. Strong singular leadership is required for efficient decision-making. This can be ensured with young leadership. May the church follow the cues of Catholicism and institute a norm of emeritus status for all authority callings in the church, literally for the benefit of all. And I have come across some church surveys. You know, they send their membership surveys to take the pulse of what people think. And that's a question on a lot of them. What would you think about some kind of retirement structure for leaders? What would you think about some kind of emeritus status? So I know they're aware, but whether they'll make any change, I don't know. But I thought this was interesting that even Romney recognized it for world leaders. I don't know about global faith leaders. Thoughts on this, RFM, and then Bill?
Well, I'm learning a lot here. The main thing I think I've learned from this story is that when God chooses a new prophet, he does it by killing the old one. Yeah. The thing is that God doesn't kill you when you reach a certain age, but when your brain shrinks to a certain size. That's what I've learned.
Really? Like a 15%er, then you're gone. So, well, I mean, it is a theory that if that's true, maybe everyone should forsake medical care completely and rely on priesthood blessings and who God wants to be in the position, right? Is it fair? I don't know.
It would have been interesting to sit down with Romney, keep asking him, get him to really fill in as much of why an 80-year-old should not be running the country. And then let him say as much as you can get him to say about that and go, should they be running a worldwide church? I mean, don't those same things apply? And at that point, he would have to change gears and go down a different path. But it would be interesting to watch him backtrack and do that.
I wonder how much Mitt Romney's brain has shrunk for him to make that gaffe.
I don't know. How old is Mitt? Is he over 80? I don't think he's over 80. Is he? Maybe he is. I'm not sure how old he is. Anyway, we'll see. I think our next story is Bill.
This one is Why Do the Gay Stay? And so the Deseret News had an opinion piece, Why So Many Gay Latter-day Saints Stay. A Deseret News article recently told a personal story of Dennis, and I apologize if I pronounce your name wrong, Dennis, but Dennis Schleicher, moving from skepticism of Mormonism to curiosity to conversion, despite his being gay. So this was a gay man who had reservations about Mormonism due to its theology, doctrine, history, whatever it was. but eventually he moved to curiosity and eventually got baptized. He describes initially viewing Mormonism through the lens of public controversies such as Proposition 8, and assuming there could never be a place for someone like him. Yet, after reading the Book of Mormon, meeting members, pursuing what he describes as personal spiritual experiences, he concluded that his relationship with God outweighed the tension between his sexual orientation and the church's teachings. His central argument is that many outsiders assume gay Latter-day Saints stay because of fear or repression, while he insists his decision is an expression of faith, agency, and a conviction that the gospel is true. This opinion piece by him also argues that modern society often frames LGBTQ identity and religious commitment as mutually exclusive, forcing people to choose one over the other. Thank goodness for diversity, huh? The author rejects that framing. By the way, I just want to notice that, like the Deseret News article says, the reason he's able to work with this, being gay and staying in, is he's acknowledging that his diversity of opinion has allowed him to do so. He doesn't feel like he's pushed into solely one camp or the other, but he can sort of stay in the nuance of it. So the author rejects that framing. He presents the church as offering purpose, community, and a relationship with Christ that he believes transcends cultural and political debates. Rather than viewing himself as trapped by Mormonism, Dennis portrays himself as someone who has freely chosen to remain because he believes the spiritual benefits outweigh the personal cost associated with the church's teachings on same-sex relationships. I would love to check in with Dennis in this moment and just say, do you honor that other people arrive at those decisions very differently? Or is your way of making it work the right way? I'd be curious what he has to say. I deeply believe we should avoid claiming we know another sacred story as well as they do. I've always stood up for that people should have a right to tell their story and not have others go, yeah, the way you tell your story, that's not accurate. This is what you actually think, feel, believe. And because of that, I trust the framing that Mr. Schlecker gives to his journey. But for me, from the 20,000-foot view, there are multiple reasons a gay person may remain committed to a high-demand religion with a homophobic theology, and sincere spiritual conviction is only one of them. High-demand religions often become intertwined with a person's entire identity, their family system, their social network, their moral framework, and the sense of eternal meaning. So leaving can therefore feel like the loss of one's community, purpose, and even one's relationship with God. Cognitive dissonance, we all know that word. It plays a part as well. So when identities conflict, people often find ways to preserve both rather than abandon either. Attachment to family, fear of social rejection, internalized religious beliefs about divine authority, hope for future resolution. I know lots of people stay because someday Mormonism will fix it and they want to be around when it gets fixed. We heard a lot of people, Darius Gray was one, I think, that's mentioned that his time in the church was hoping for a better future. And years of identity investment can all reinforce continued participation. None of these explanations necessarily invalidate the author's stated reasons for staying. Rather, they illustrate that human beings frequently remain in systems that impose significant personal cost because those systems also satisfy profound psychological needs for belonging, certainty, identity, attachment, and existential meaning. And I am not gay, but I definitely stayed in Mormonism way longer than I needed to for those reasons. And so whether it's homosexuality, whether it's serious doubts over history, whether it's being abused in the system in other ways, people stay for the reasons they stay. And all I would want to say here is that there's lots of reasons to stay and lots of reasons to go, and we ought to honor anyone and everyone for doing either. Your guys' thoughts?
I kind of compare this to Tom Christofferson's, to bring up another Christofferson brother, book, that he wrote about how you can stay in the church and be a gay man. And I just, I have a lot of issues with that book. I know people personally who have children who are gay who read that book and said, see, I just have to hope. They're going to be fine. They can just stay. It'll be fine. And it ended up doing a lot of damage. I would hope that Tom's book and a book like this would say exactly what you just said, Bill. This is my story, my personal story. This works for me. This will not work for a lot of you. So please read this book as my story. Don't have false hope if you're an LDS parent and want your child to be different than they are, and don't have false hope for yourself. If you don't want to do this and remain in the church, and a book like this says, oh, he did it, I can do it. I just want there to be disclaimers on all these books, because I feel like they can do so much damage. They kind of make me angry. I don't want to say that because I know it's one person's journey and you have to validate that. But especially with Tom Christofferson's book, he knew his notoriety, his position. He knew what that book would be. He knew that faithful parents would use that to continue to not accept the journey that their own child was on. So that's my fear for this book. I just wish there was more of a disclaimer saying this is my story, only mine, nobody else's.
Before you comment, RFM, I'll just note that it's one of the things that Mormonism does that I think is really harmful, is creating a one size fits all. If you're one of God's children on the one true path, you need to think exactly like this. You need to believe in these ways. And it allows, every human is so different from every other human that to put everybody in the same track, it's inevitable that it's going to do immense amounts of harm. RFM?
How I understand the message is, and he's not the only one to give this kind of message to, okay? There are several groups who have historically and currently given the same kind of message, I think, which is this. This is how I understand it. The church is so true. The church is so true that it's worth being treated in it as a second-class citizen. And eventually the question will arise with the person who thinks that, if the church is so true, why would it treat me as a second-class citizen?
Beautiful.
I guess we'll see how well the book ages, right? You don't want to be cynical like that, but sometimes things change, attitudes change, situations change. So we will see. Thank you for that story, Bill. Anything more on that? Or are we, here we are. We're on to my story. Have you always wanted to be a part of removing annotations on church records? I don't know that I have. I've certainly wanted to know how it works. And I was sent a job posting from my friend Suspicious Mite. I've had him on the podcast before. He kind of has his finger on the pulse of all these kinds of things for exactly that. Somebody that is involved in removing annotations and looking at confidential records. I believe this is a job similar to, and I always forget her name, the young woman that you guys had on Mormonism Live who talked to, I cannot remember her name.
Poetic Kate.
Yeah. I think it's similar to this. So let me get over here to my slides. So this is a job description. It says confidential records too. And in this case, they want somebody that can speak Portuguese. I guess there's a huge amount of records from Portugal and Brazil, perhaps, where they need to go through these, determine if the annotation should be removed. For those of you that don't know what we're talking about by annotation, when you are disciplined by the church, a record is created detailing that discipline for certain crimes like CSA, I think embezzlement, things like that. There's a little annotation put on your record. So if you move wards, change locations, a new bishop can see an annotation, call Salt Lake, find out what your scenario is. But as we found out, especially for CSA, this is supposed to protect children. It is removed often quickly within a year or so. Of course, my point of view is that should never be removed. It should never be removed. Everyone should always be aware that this happened at some point. So what is this job description? It says the position helps provide support staff to the Office of the First Presidency, the Restoration and Cancellation Committee. This sounds like something out of Harry Potter to me. The Strengthening Church Member Committee, That is that committee that is watching right now. Hi, guys. They monitor all of our podcasts. And the Office of the Presiding Bishopric by analyzing and processing documents concerning these matters, meaning matters that all those committees look into, I guess. And it provides confidential information to general authorities and authorized church employees. It also supports local priesthood leaders and international administration offices in their duties pertaining to disciplinary and administrative actions, the annotation of membership records, right, and confidential applications. Look at all these departments that surround discipline. I mean, do other churches do this? It's pretty incredible. The workforce behind this process of discipline and undisciplining, I guess you could call it. So again, I think this is right in line with what your guest that one time did. So what exactly are you asked to do if you should take this job and you speak Portuguese? Analyze and process all restoration of blessings, reinstatement, and readmission applications, including applications involving apostasy and plural marriage. Ensure the accuracy and completeness of cases reviewed from local units or received from local units. Request additional information from priesthood leaders as needed. Prepare case summaries and decision letters for the RNC committee. That's the restoration and whatever committee. I can't remember. Yeah, I can't remember the names of them. Will sometimes make recommendations to these committees. So again, we learned this before from that stake president that I was talking to and others, that it does go through the first presidency and apostles if somebody is going to be reinstated or annotation removed, but they put these files on lower level desks and they do the due diligence. They go through the records, they talk to the leaders, they find out the scenario, and then they make a recommendation to be approved or not approved by a higher up. It says primary contact for priesthood leaders. We're talking people on the ground, right, who know the offenders. Mission presidents and stake presidents by responding to priesthood leader inquiries, calls or emails, with tact, diplomacy, and a thorough knowledge of church doctrine and policy. So I'm guessing if you're a stake president, you're like, it's a good guy. His CSA was like years ago. Let's put him in the youth program. I got to call Salt Lake, make sure we can get that annotation removed. This is the kind of person that you would speak to in Portuguese, right? Another thing it says is review the work of other sealing application analysts. That to me says, oh my gosh, sealing cancellations, right? How many of those must filter through Salt Lake on a daily basis? Of course, for women who need to get their sealings, taken away so they can remarry somebody else. Looks like this person would be involved in that. Accuracy and completeness, give feedback and suggestions for improvement. And then the next slide is just, you have to be able to speak Portuguese. You have to be a member of the church. This job can open and close at any moment. You have to be able to be very confidential about the information that you're working with. But here you see, where is the revelation, right? Where does God say, you're okay, you can come back in, you can get that annotation removed? That's not happening. It's a procedure. There are algorithms. There are people going through the motions, doing data searches, and then it's signed off by upper leadership. But the bottom line is, most all of these annotations are removed. Nobody going forward will know, like a Wade Christofferson, that you ever did anything wrong or had an annotation. Even if there is an annotation, the bishops that we've talked to have let us know, we didn't know what to do with that. We called Salt Lake. We weren't sure. We were unaware. Only a few of us knew. So it's just interesting to me to see a little behind the curtain of this process where there's actually somebody who's hired to take care of all this. And not just somebody, but so many people. This is a huge amount of people working these departments, having to do with discipline, annotations, cancellations, just busy little bees, right? But again, this is a corporation. It's not a religion. So anyway, thoughts very quickly before we move to the next story, Bill, and then RFM on, first of all, would you want this job? I think this would maybe break your testimony. I'm not kidding. Seeing all this stuff, don't you think?
I think mine would be okay.
You think you'd love it. You're like popcorn, right? Oh, this is juicy.
I'll just say, hopefully I'm not stealing your thought here, RFM, but I'll just say, remembering that conversation with Kate, we've mentioned this a few times in other places, but she made mention that she was doing this work and that by her being loyal and doing her duty and showing up in ways that they noticed that she was more loyal and obedient and less bothered or driven to ask questions than maybe other people at certain stages, that they made her aware that there were other groups, and if you are really good at being the person in this group, you get to work yourself into other groups. There'll be other opportunities to be in more secret, sacred groups than this one. And I think that's at least interesting, and we should never forget that.
The names of which those groups were so secret that she couldn't even know what they were, of these other committees. By the way, that's how you know it's not Harry Potter, Rebecca, because it would have been the Restoration and Cancellation Ministry, or the Ministry of Restorations and Cancellations. See, that's how you can tell the difference.
The Ministry of Religion. That's right.
The other thing is Mitt Romney's going to be 80 next March 12th on 2027. So I did look that up. And the final thing is, I think the revelation in this process, finally back on point, the revelation, any revelation in this process comes from the flipping of a coin by senior leadership when they're deciding whether to accept the recommendation of the underlings.
Yeah. And can I just say it's a humiliating process to have to write these letters if it's you yourself, like a sealing cancellation. When I was at BYU, I had a roommate who had already been married. She was like 25. I was younger than that. And she was trying to get her sealing canceled. She had had some transgressions in between being divorced and wanting to remarry. And she tried to detail them to her leader. She had to write a detailed letter to the first presidency. I could type. I had a state-of-the-art typewriter. This is early 80s, right? She's like, Rebecca, would you type this up if I just speak it? So I'm like taking this dictation of this poor girl detailing, and then I know I was divorced, but I met this guy and I went to his house. It was late. And I'm just typing going, oh my God, and thinking these old men are going to read this lovely young woman, right? Who's a normal young woman. She got divorced. She's trying to get remarried. She's trying to get everything canceled. And she had to write this disgusting detail-oriented letter that I had to type. I'm a yes person. I never say no. I had to type this letter up, and I don't know what happened. I moved out of that apartment before any letter came back, but it's a humiliating process that people are put through for sealings anyway. So anyway, a little side story there. Bill, I think you have our next story.
All right. So this one, I can even just give you a real quick overview. Washington Examiner did a article on latter-day transparency, a new age of openness for the LDS Church. It's nothing new for any of us. They're basically noticing, the reporter Timothy Narosi basically is noticing like, hey, Mormonism is showing up different today than it did in decades past. It's less secretive. It's talking more openly about its history. So he goes to Salt Lake and does a tour around the temple. And this person shows him, like, I think it's like the little model of the temple, and shows him the various rooms where things are done. And he gets the chance to go like, oh, like the things that decades past they would have avoided telling me about, including the second anointing, by the way. I'll turn to the next one. Including the second anointing, like they were talking about it. And he even makes mention of like LDS influencers like Jasmine Rappley and how they're discussing these things out loud, and when in the past they would not have talked about these things at all. And there's an awareness in the article, like, is it the technological age of information that's forcing the church's hand? Or is the church genuinely coming to a moment of transparency? And so I'll just read my last paragraph here. The article notes a sincere movement toward openness, and maybe some of it is. But I think there's another way to look at what is happening. The church didn't suddenly discover transparency as a moral virtue. The internet destroyed its ability to control information. Hidden camera temple videos exist. Thank you, New Name Noah. Former members discuss the ordinances publicly. Historical documents are searchable from your couch. So the institutional choice is no longer between secrecy and transparency. That choice was taken away from them. The choice now is between allowing critics to define the story or getting out in front of the information and reframing it on the church's own terms. And so he definitely, again, Timothy Narosi, the author of the article, definitely notices that church transparency has increased for sure. Mormonism is being more open and transparent, but in a lot of ways, Tim, it's not. And for what little bit it has, and maybe even a big bit it has. I'll just note it's not maybe for the reasons we'd all wish it was for.
I'll
Anything?
believe the church is being more transparent when they answer those 6 questions that I have for D. Todd Christofferson.
Yeah, they're not going to do that. That's not going to happen.
No, and I think you're right, Bill. The only reason is they're forced to be transparent. The reason they have those visitor center now with cutouts of the temple and models is because they did surveys of user experiences on Temple Square. And the surveys came back, from non-members going to Temple Square. I don't know what this is. I don't know what happens in there. It feels weird. What is it? That is the reason they're trying to show you. But again, as a meme I made before said, why can't we go in that building? Oh, no, you can look at this model exactly of the building. Yeah, but why can't we find out? So they may be sharing a few things that we, draw attention to, and then they have to clarify. But they're not going to, on a temple open house, show you an initiatory room. They don't even have an easel in front of the initiatory room. The ones I've gone to lately, they're not going to tell you that. And I just read a post today from a mom who was upset, faithful social media. My daughter went through the temple. She didn't like it. She said it was so weird. She wasn't prepared. And everyone's like, well, didn't she take the temple classes? Yes, she did. Until the church in those classes tell members, this is what you're going to see: robes, arm raisings, handshakes, touching, chanting. Until they tell people what you're going to see, you're not being transparent. You're alluding to things. You're making it sound biblical. So I understand why they think they might be more transparent. They're trying, they're saying a little bit more, but only when forced. So I don't know.
I'll say just one more thing too. I had one more slide. I'll just read the 2 sentences here. Actually, a few more than 2, but 3 or 4. Is that genuine? Is what we're noticing genuine institutional transparency? Or is it a massive organization adapting to a world where secrecy is no longer technologically possible?
Yeah.
And like I said, maybe the answer is a little bit of both. But I suspect the internet deserves significantly more credit for Mormon transparency than the Mormon Church does.
And so do you, by the way, Bill. And so do you, Rebecca.
And you, Mr. Radio Free Mormon.
And you, there it is. We're self-congratulating each other. So, I thought that was a great article. And we'll see when the open house happens, right? When the Salt Lake open house, which is coming up next April. So we'll see what happens. I have one quick little story just at the end. Another sad one out of Rexburg. We remember last week we reported on the young man who had started fires allegedly in his parents' home and had been arrested and was getting treatment and help. And we talked about, BYU, Idaho, pressures on young adults and students. Then I came across this other article. I don't know how we didn't catch it back when a couple weeks ago, but here it is. It says, man sentenced after attempting suicide by setting apartment on fire with others inside. And this actually happened back in 2024. And maybe you can explain this, RFM. He pled guilty, but just now is being sentenced. It's kind of interesting if we can read through this, but it looks like he graduated. And a few days before graduation in 2024 at BYU, Idaho is when this happened. I'll just read this very quickly. According to police reports, Rexburg police officer was called to the Jordan Ridge Apartments on April 5th. This is 2024, right when this young man was about to graduate. After a report of arson, police spoke with White at the scene, who said he was intending to self-harm and had lit a fire in his apartment. Court documents say he admitted to purposely removing the natural gas line from the gas source to the water heater. He also disabled the smoke detectors and got rid of the fire extinguishers. It's a shared apartment with all the other people that live there. White stated that he used rubbing alcohol to light the fire, poured the alcohol on the floor next to the bed, trailing it to the gas line, where he put a crumpled up piece of paper next to the open gas line. He then told police he lit a candle, placed it on the table in an effort to ignite the gas fumes. When that didn't work, he tried to start a fire in the living room using paper towels and sheet music. During court, he indicated that one of White's roommates had discovered the fire and quickly extinguished it. Again, this is just a just a horrific scenario for the roommates that are just sleeping there, right? End of term, finals are over, graduation's coming up. And not only just the roommates, the prosecuting attorney, we don't need to go through everything, just mentioned this literally could have been dozens of people if this fire got it started. The defense attorney, of course, said, mental health episode, obviously, please be lenient. So it looks like he's received 5 years of felony probation, and he's going to serve 6 months in jail, and then he's going to have 100 hours of community service. But my final slide, that's what he says right there. Initially pleaded guilty to 1 count in 2024 and has been home in Arizona, kind of getting treatment, and now back in court and has received his sentence. But before I have you guys weigh in, I just wanted to put this up about young adults, again, mental health, college students. We just need to be aware. Our kids are grown up, they're in their 20s, but they need people to be aware. Roommates can't always tell what's going on. Adults, if you know kids, and I call them kids even though they're 20, just keep an eye out, just watch, because this is so sad, these 2 scenarios in Rexburg. And I don't know, in my mind, you throw high demand, high control religion on top of it, and who knows? But anyway, it's a sad story. We're glad he's getting help. And maybe you can just speak for a second, RFM, on what that means to have pled guilty in 2024 and now finally being sentenced with what's happening.
I expect it has to do with something that you did not mention as you were just going through quickly, and I know why you're going through quickly, but the fact that this fellow has been engaged in treatment since the time. So what probably happened is they entered into a deal and there was a bifurcated agreement. You do your treatment. If you do treatment for 2 years and you successfully complete that treatment, then we've got one option for you, which is the option that we're seeing. And if you blow out of the treatment or do something wrong, then we're going to hammer you.
Yeah, and that makes sense because it did mention in another article that he was at home with parents. He had apologized. He was so sorry. He was doing community service already. He was helping people in his neighborhood. So that seems the kinder option, to allow a couple years of treatment. But then, as the prosecuting attorney said, this could have been dozens of people that, were actually killed. So you can't diminish that either. So any final thoughts, Bill? I know it's a sad story to end on, but maybe just, positive thoughts about helping others with mental health, as situations come up. Oops, muted.
Back in 2003, somebody set on fire a dormitory at Ohio State University. It ended up killing 5 students. One of them was one of my brother's best friends. So I'm aptly aware that, again, these are just kids. I know that schizophrenia often sets in sometime in late teens, early adulthood. Not that that's the instance here, but just noting that people can seem really normal, reacting in normal ways, and then suddenly things can shift, things can change. And so it is crucial. By the way, they never found the person who set that fire. You can go online if you just type in 2003 Ohio State dormitory fire. It's like a little apartment thing and you can see the building. It was a party that night, and somebody did it intentionally. They know it was arson, but they don't know who set it. It only takes a brief moment. If this had gone a different way, like you point out, Rebecca, this might have been a dozen or dozens of people that lost their life.
With the gas line, absolutely. And all those steps that he took, that's very, very well thought out.
Yeah. And so I think the 2003 thing was sort of a similar instance where somebody either had mental illness or had some vendetta. And if you're, again, the audience that we have here, some of you are in your 30s, 40s, you've got younger kids, you've got kids who are entering high school, college. Just, again, like you guys said, just keep your eyes open and your ears to the ground and watch what's going on and be aware. And if something doesn't feel right, trust your intuition, trust your gut, and take precautions. Curiosity in all its forms, I think, is one of our greatest helpers.
100%. That's it. All right. Ending on a little bit of a sad note, but hopefully a good PSA. Bill, do you want to talk about this cruise? You're so good at making it sound so amazing, because everybody, Post-Mormon Celebration Cruise, That title was Bill's idea, and it set the tone for the whole thing.
Yeah, I love it. You know, we could have gone different directions. We could have made this just an opportunity for people who are really sort of in the thick of it to come and vent, because that needs to happen too. But we really wanted this to be a place to celebrate. You've gone through a hard thing. You realized, in spite of everyone around you being in the thing, you realized it wasn't what it was claimed to be, and you figured it out. And it takes, I think, a certain kind of critical thinking to do that. It takes a certain kind of bravery to stand up for all the times in the past that your boundaries have been crossed, or something happened that wasn't appropriate. And finally you said, enough's enough. You put your foot down, and you did that at the risk of loss of relationships, at having people inside the system still judge you. And we wanted to give everyone a chance to celebrate this journey that you guys have been on, that the three of us have been on, and to come to a place to celebrate all the things that we've been through, and to recognize, like, wow, that was a big thing, and to congratulate you. So September 13th, just a couple months away now. We're getting close.
Yeah.
September 13th, we will embark from Long Beach, Los Angeles. And then the 14th, I think maybe this image might be off. I think the first 2 days might be at sea because there's been a little switch in the schedule. But nonetheless, we will go to Cabo San Lucas. We'll go to Mazatlan. I'm probably not saying that right. Puerto Vallarta. We'll have plenty of time on the boat. We'll do a lot of fun things. We'll have excursions. All of the social influencers that are there at the bottom, as well as Radio Free Mormon, Rebecca, Biblioteca, and myself, we'll be going on our own excursions, and we hope that we'll get to see you guys on those with us. And we're all doing different things, but there'll be plenty of time to celebrate the difficulty this journey's been, but also like how courageous and brave it's been to go through it. And I know that people on the believing side sometimes will mock, like, oh, that was brave, really?
Yeah.
Man, I'll tell you, I've been to enough functions gathering people who have been through this, and I think it does take a high degree of bravery to leave a high demand system and embark on your own at the loss of those who remained in, those connections at least staying the way they were. And so please come hang out with us. You can go to khexethtravel.com/or/post-mormon-celebration-cruise, or I'll put it in the live chat right now. I've got a link here that I just put all the data on our website on a page. And so I'm sharing that right now to everybody. You can go to Mormon Discussions Podcasts, mormondiscussionspodcast.org. I'm saying that wrong. Sorry. The email's different, but mormondiscussionpodcast.org. Click the celebration, post-Mormon celebration cruise at the top. The link's there in the chat. And you've got all the info there. You'll want to make sure you have your passport, have travel insurance, all the other things. But for 7 nights, 8 days, come have a ton of fun with us. We hope to see each and every one of you there.
I feel like you bore your testimony in the name of Jesus Christ. Amen.
I feel like nobody does that better than you, Bill.
I know, it's really good. Yeah, no, it like brings tears to your eyes. It's going to be amazing. It's going to be really fun. There's like 200 of us so far, so we're really excited. Let us see what else is on the radar for the three of us in this next week. I'm up next Tuesday night, 6 p.m., our regular Mormonish time slot, and I am completely thrilled about this interview. You guys are familiar with the Temple Oracle, right? Where you can go and find out your temple name. It just recently kind of went random. Also on this site, they do a compare and contrast of patriarchal blessings. They also have membership data. I don't know where they scrape it all from. All kinds of things. Well, nobody knows who this person is. Who runs this? Where did this come from? Well, I have the person. There he is right now. His name is Clint Kimball. And we sat down and talked about his story, how he started the website, where he gets his information, how he continues to get such good information. And he is a character. I asked him to send me a profile picture, as I often do with a guest. They usually send me something off LinkedIn, or This is the profile picture Clint sent me. So if this doesn't set for the tone for the interview, I don't know what will, but it's going to be tomorrow night at 6 p.m. Mountain Time, and you're definitely going to want to tune in, find out more about Clint, the Temple Oracle, and all the other data that he's able to crunch and make available to us. So fantastic. What do you guys have going on? I'll let you take your slides from here.
Yeah, I keep putting this out of order, but this is the Thursday episode. This is the next in the series of a logical deconstruction of Mormonism. Mormon concept of God has changed. We'll just talk about some of Joseph's early theology, along with the Book of Mormon, and where those things have changed. These episodes tend to be between 5 and 7 minutes long. They're just a really quick way in a series to maybe share with somebody who's on the fence and help them see just how much has changed, how many things don't add up, how many moments your brain has to make illogical leaps in order to keep belief together. So that'll be Thursday, sometime maybe around 9 a.m.
I like that picture of Jesus on the left there, the far left. That picture of Jesus is the closest to the real Jesus that I think I've ever seen.
What are you trying to tell us, RFM?
I'm sorry, I can't share my most sacred experiences, Rebecca.
When you decide to do it, come on, Mormonish.
And then Wednesday, Mormonism Live. I'm really excited about this. I originally had an episode planned around Zion's camp. And then I don't know how I found this, but I found the 1848 writings of a ex-Mormon named, or last name's Lewis.
Catherine?
Yeah, Catherine Lewis. Thank you, Martha. Catherine Lewis. And it was available for free to listen to on Audible through Amazon Music. And I don't know what that meant, how I got there, but I ended up being able to listen to it. It was only like 2.5 hours long, but it was jam-packed with cool things that I think would make a great conversation around the history of Mormonism. So Radio Free Mormon and myself, Wednesday, we will tackle all of the interesting things that she makes mention of. But I think the coolest thing is she gives a really long, detailed account of the endowment when she went through in 1845 or 1846. And there are so many cool things, including hearing from, she hasn't experienced the endowment yet. She's on the other side of the curtain, but she hears what sounds like someone crawling around on the floor. And I thought, oh, I know exactly what she was witnessing or hearing in that moment. And then she later gets to where she's in the endowment and she's like, oh, like there's the guy, he's crawling around on the floor. So we'll read this, we'll go over the moments that kind of catch RFM and I's attention and just make note of the little historical connections that are going on. One thing I think that becomes crystal clear is, I know the polygamy deniers would go, that's not Joseph Smith's endowment, that's Brigham Young's endowment. But I'll just say the endowment and polygamy are quite tight at the hip, and you see that over and over again in Catherine Lewis's expression of the endowment. So Wednesday, 6 p.m. Mountain Time, please join us for that. I think it'll be a great historical episode.
Yeah, I'm excited and looking forward to that one.
Yeah, why don't they have that character anymore? I love that sneaky, creeping character.
Yeah.
Well, this was Satan.
Yeah, no, I know. That's what I'm saying. Remember what we had Lee Cranenbuhl on talking all about that. And you'd be amazed at who played Satan, like major church characters crawling around, crawling up the aisle. I love it. I'd love to see that.
I believe was
Yep.
Well, after he got cursed, he had no arms or legs.
That's right. So you're just kind of wiggling.
It reminds me of a terrible joke that I learned in high school, which I won't tell here. I'll tell you after the show.
Yeah, no, don't tell those. Those are terrible.
It's a little Timmy joke.
Yeah, no, don't tell those.
All right. I'll tell it on Mormonism After Dark if you remind me. That's going to be this Friday. It's going to be 8 o'clock p.m. Mountain Time. It's going to be a great time. We're going to have a great show. We always do. We'll have some fun then. Okay, so, and then what's the next slide?
I don't know. Do you want me to flip it? You can flip it. I'll flip it. There it is. I flipped it. There it is.
We're still using my research. This is the latest RFM. Finally, we get to talk about another Mormon apologist. This is David Schnell, Mock Schnell, and how he's using my, it's still in 2026. They're using my research from 1993. I am the grandfather of Mormon apologetics. Okay. And RFM is going to be this weekend. I'll be recording this. It's already taking form in my mind. I have some slides ready to go, but it's not ready. It's got to be It's got to be optimal before I record it and release it. And I've still got a few days left to work on it, and I'll be doing that. It's going to be great. I hope you'll join me. It'll be Saturday night. It'll probably be 7:00 p.m. Mountain Time.
Wow.
Back to you, Rebecca.
There it is. I hope everybody is setting their calendar, all these amazing things coming up. So, and I will say, if you are on Mormonish watching, please go over to Mormon Discussions, like, subscribe if you haven't already. I can't imagine you haven't already. Come on. And if you're over here on Mormon Discussions, jump back over to Mormonish, like and subscribe. We also, Bill's really good about putting everything in the show notes, all the information you would need if you'd like to make a donation or to either of the channels, or if you'd like to connect. He's really good about putting all that information because we love to hear stories from you guys. We get a lot of our stories from things that you post and things that you bring to our attention. So keep it up. We love it. So, all right. Thank you, Bill. Thank you, RFM. We will see everybody next Monday, always on the dot, 6 p.m. We'll see you next time on the Mormon Newscast. Bye, everybody.
Good night.
That's a wrap for this week's edition of the Mormon Newscast. We appreciate you tuning in and sharing this time with us. Keep the conversation going and stay informed on all things Mormonism. Until next week, wishing you peace and joy. See you next Monday at 6 p.m. on the Mormon Newscast.